National parks are some of the most beautiful places on our planet, but they must be respected. Every year millions of people visit national parks, with the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and Yellowstone National Park being among the most popular. Oftentimes in countries that have a beautiful countryside or an incredible scenic and historically important area of wildlife, efforts will be made by the government to preserve this beautiful slice of nature, in the hopes of allowing the public at large to enjoy its unaging beauty for centuries to come. And they do this by establishing federally protected locations to prevent further developments of any kind that could damage the protected area known as a national park or wildlife preserve. Last month, officials working at Yellowstone said that someone went missing, and that the individual's brother, who was a Navy SEAL, had vanished from the area. Workers at Yellowstone National Park released a statement at the end of September and said an autopsy had been completed on the 67-year-old, saying that exposure to the elements or hypothermia was the cause of his passing. The two men had visited the area, with his brother being 74 years old. The alarms were raised by family members when they didn't return from their trip. National park workers said they found a campsite with their belongings, saying that other personal belongings were found close to the shore of Shoshone Lake. Those working at the park have said they're scanning the water in order to find out what happened, with the National Park Service's Submerged Resources Center saying that they're using sonar equipment during this investigation. Park crews continue to search for the brother by foot and boat, with assistance from Grand Tetons National Park interagency helicopter and dog teams from Western Montana search dogs. Rangers have said it's been 3 weeks since the 74-year-old went missing. Both men were not fragile, as both of them were former National Park Service workers, along with the brother also being a retired Navy SEAL. The lake where Mr. O'Neill went missing can be found southwest of West Thumb in Yellowstone, and something that was noted is that this lake barely reaches above 9 degrees, with rangers saying that if someone found themselves submerged in the lake, they could have as little as 20 minutes to get themselves out. Yellowstone National Park said the following: "This incident remains under investigation. While we cannot comment further about the specifics of this investigation, we will provide updates when appropriate to do so." End quote. This isn't the first time that something like this has happened in Yellowstone, with park officials saying that although the supervolcano is of immense interest, most of their days revolve around watching park visitors and ensuring that they aren't putting themselves in danger. Sometimes though, Yellowstone workers are not quick enough to reach people, and the unthinkable happens. One report was detailed back in 2016, and it stated that a man had fallen into a hot spring in Yellowstone. However, his body could not be recovered because it had dissolved before park rangers could reach it. The individual was Colin Scott, a 23-year-old who attempted to soak or hot pot in the hot spring. For those unaware, hot potting is a trend where someone will jump and attempt to wash themselves in a hot spring. The only problem with this though is that temperatures in these hot springs are far too high for humans to handle, and the results are usually extreme burns and a trip to the hospital. Some people have been lucky and only sustained minor burns, but unfortunately in this case Colin didn't make it out. The accident was even recorded by the man's sister, and these details have come to light due to a news station submitting a Freedom of Information request. Yellowstone's Deputy Chief Ranger Lawrence Ferris said the following about the incident: "The whole area is geothermally active. There's a closure in place to protect people from doing that for their own safety. It's a very unforgiving environment. The sad thing is that park officials said that this incident could have been easily avoided, as the pair were seen actively looking for a hot spring, ignoring the various warning signs that told them not to do so." The incident report reads as follows: "I was later informed that all recovery had ceased due to lack of physical remains. It was explained to me that due to the acidity of the water and the thermal feature, as well as the extremely high temperature of the thermal feature, the remains most likely dissolved overnight. I attended the closing brief for the incident and had cleared the area in order to process evidence. I left the key to Colin Scott's car in the Norris Geyser Basin Ranger's office, so that Crystal could have access to it when Colin's father arrived. The car was recovered without incident, and not in my presence. I was also told that Colin Scott's father no longer wanted to meet with me. End of report. The National Park statistics have said that this year violations have tripled, meaning that over 120 arrests have been made, which resulted in many of those individuals being banned from the national park. They said that what many people don't understand is that the crust above the water is extremely thin, and there have been accounts of people falling into hot springs. In fact, this recently happened to one woman. After she fell in, the national park was closed to visitors, so park officials have said she was there illegally. When she fell into the hot springs, she suffered various wounds. At the time, the national park had been shut down from visitors since the 24th of March, and although at the time there was talks about opening it back up to the public, officials said there were still ongoing talks. The woman in question ignored the warnings and was found walking on the Wyoming side. At the time, the individual had not been identified, but she could be seen taking photographs close to Old Faithful. Despite falling in and injuring herself, the woman was able to pull herself out and drive around 50 miles. She was, however, stopped by a park ranger and airlifted to a burn center at Eastern Idaho Regional Medical Center. Park officials have said that even though it's bad that she was injured, she may face penalties for not following the rules. They said that at the time everyone was doing a good job at staying away from the national park, and said that she shouldn't have been there. In recent years, it seems that it hasn't just been humans that have struggled. Sadly, there's very few places left that haven't felt the effects of humans, and wildlife researchers have said that drastic changes need to happen in order to preserve our natural world. Humans are an extremely invasive species, and one of the ways we are directly affecting wildlife populations is by destroying habitats and overhunting. Ecosystems can be quite fragile, and although people are now starting to change their ways in order to help animals, there's still a lot that needs to be done. Residents in Russia have just reported that hundreds of ravens suddenly fell from the sky. These reports came out of the Novosibirsk region, with one resident saying that they counted the birds, and they got to 400 in just one area. This is just the latest report of mass bird deaths that have been reported, and as of right now, scientists are struggling to come up with an answer for why this is happening in various countries. One local said that the birds were sitting in the trees, then as they flew out they all started to drop one by one. Experts close to the region have said they will be investigating the event, but said that the most likely answer for this is poisoning. Interestingly, this explanation was put forward by other scientists in different countries, but it's caused some to question whether this is what's really happening, with some asking whether every bird will drop out of the sky at the same time. In the last 12 months alone, there's been mass bird die-offs in Italy, England, Ireland, New York, Indonesia, India, and now Russia, sparking concerns that something is happening to our world that's messing with these birds, and is in turn causing them to fall out of the sky. Some who have observed these events have said it's as if these birds are getting hit by blunt force trauma, saying that whatever is causing this is taking the birds out immediately, and that it's as if the birds were perfectly fine before this happened. As mentioned, this isn't the only place where this strange event has been observed. Biologists working at the New Mexico State University and White Sands Missile Range collected and examined nearly 300 birds that had mysteriously passed away. The researchers stated that various species had passed away under mysterious circumstances, and many of these were put under unknown causes. Martha Desmond, who is a professor at the New Mexico State University Department of Fish, Wildlife and Conservation Ecology, said that the sheer amount of birds that had passed away was worrying. She went on to say the following: "It's terribly frightening. We've never seen anything like this. We're losing probably hundreds of thousands if not millions of migratory birds." End quote. At first, researchers said that it may have been an isolated incident, but the more these birds were being discovered showed researchers that this might not have been the case, and that something worrying was happening. Local residents then came forward and said that the local wildlife had been behaving strangely, and that various birds were not active or flying like normal. At the time though, these residents didn't know that hundreds of thousands of birds were about to pass away for unknown reasons. As of right now, some of the affected birds include warblers, sparrows, swallows, blackbirds and flycatchers. Martha Desmond went on to say the following: "A number of these species are already in trouble. They are already experiencing huge population declines, and then to have a traumatic event like this is devastating." End quote. Tricia Cutler, who is a wildlife biologist, said the following: "People have been reporting that the birds look sleepy. They're really just lethargic. One thing we're not seeing is that our resident birds mix in with these dead birds. We have resident birds that live here. Some of them migrate and some of them don't, but we're not getting birds like roadrunners or quail or doves." End quote. Martha Desmond did say though that some of these birds must be healthy, as they have their migratory feathers, but said that something is happening after this process that is wiping the birds out, going on to say this isn't just a few birds. Something massive is happening that's caused these birds to drop. Another thing that added confusion was that people suggested that it may have been the insects the birds were eating that caused them to drop, but the biologist noted that many of these birds were seed eaters and suffered the same fate. As of right now, many of these birds are having tests carried out on them, and this is happening at the US Fish and Wildlife Service Forensics Laboratory in Ashland. The researchers there hope that further analysis will help them answer why so many birds suffered the same fate. Desmond said the following: "Over 3 billion birds have died since 1970. Insect populations are crashing, and this is just an unprecedented mortality." Scientists did say that one explanation that could explain why this is happening is that of strong winds, although as you can imagine this wasn't met with open arms, and others said that something else was at play. Scientists and researchers have investigated this phenomena over the years, and different theories have been put forward. Various things can affect these birds. This ranges from electromagnetic currents to things like poisons. As some have pointed out though, if these animals were poisoned, is it likely that they would all drop at once and in the same area? In these situations, all of the birds can be found very close to each other. Some have said it's as if these birds were zapped, and whatever passed through them caused them to pass away on the spot. People have been putting forward their own theories as to why this is happening, noting that radio towers and radio wave emissions could be messing with the bird's senses, saying that tests are being carried out and it's proven that this does directly affect these birds. Recent volcanic eruptions on the island of La Palma in the Canary Islands has led to some asking what the implications are of such an event. Updates are constantly flooding in from the Canary Islands, with locals and those close to the region fearing that a mega tsunami could hit the US East Coast. Scientists and those that are keeping an eye on the data have said that for the first time since 1971, lava has reached the surface on the island of La Palma at the volcano, leading first responders to evacuate the nearby areas. As of right now, the following has been highlighted. The lava flow has reached over 420 hectares. According to Spain's Department of National Security, more than 1,000 buildings have been affected by the lava flow, with 6,000 people being evacuated. Officials have estimated there's already been over €220 million worth of damage. Spanish airlines Binter and Canary Fly have said they've stopped flights and won't be flying over the island, saying that there's currently large ash clouds. The head spokesperson for the emergency response plan said the following: "The behaviour of the volcano has been stable for several hours. It's good news for everyone." End quote. Increased earthquakes throughout the area though has led to some asking whether something big is going to happen, namely a mega tsunami that would devastate the nearby areas. Although officials are keeping a close eye on the situation, the worry here is that a large landslide could trigger a massive tsunami. For those unaware, a mega tsunami is a tsunami which is destructive to coastal ecosystems, including towns, city, forests, lakes and rivers. They also have devastating effects on the seabed and the seafloor. The United States Geological Survey has said that because there is no major subduction zones in the Atlantic Ocean, there has been a relatively low frequency of tsunamis compared to the Pacific Ocean. They also said the following: in 1946, 1960 and 1964, major tsunamis, giant sea waves usually caused by earthquakes or landslides, struck coastal areas of the Pacific Ocean. End quote. According to the National Weather Service's Tsunami Warning Center in Palma, Alaska, they've said that there is no threat of a mega tsunami. But what would happen if a mega tsunami was to hit the United States? And could it happen in the near future? What's worrying is that scientists who are conducting tests on glaciers have said that they're melting at an extremely fast rate, and that lots of rocks and mountain stones are starting to become exposed, and in some of these places it could cause a landslide to happen. If a large portion of a slope was to give way, it could easily generate a tsunami. Scientists have said that one of these locations where this could happen is that of Barry Glacier in Alaska, and said if this was to happen, the United States could potentially be hit by a mega tsunami. According to the experts, this mega tsunami could hit the United States within the next 12 months, but noted that it will probably happen within 20 years. A group of environmental scientists have been vocal about this, and said that we're on borrowed time. They've even penned a letter to the Alaska Department of Natural Resources. The note was to warn authorities about the events that could unfold in the near future. They said the following: "We're a group of scientists with expertise in climate change, landslides and tsunami hazards, and we've identified an unstable mountain slope above the toe of Barry Glacier in Barry Arms 60 miles east of Anchorage that has the potential to fail and generate a tsunami. This tsunami could impact areas frequented by tourists, fishing vessels and potentially hundreds of people at one time." End quote. Back in 2018, scientists had warned about the activity on the island of La Palma in the Canary Islands, saying that they're aware of what's going on, and said that a huge landslide could happen, which in turn would generate a massive tsunami in the Atlantic Ocean. They detailed that if this was to happen, the volcano would first crack and split. The steam inside the volcano would have to find an exit, and would in turn push against the volcano wall. This structure wouldn't be able to hold this pressure, and entire sections would begin to break off. If this happened, the Atlantic Ocean would start to fill with large rocks, and the subsequent collapse would cause a tsunami across the North Atlantic, reaching as far as North America. Some of the biggest tsunamis have been generated by landslides, and not earthquakes. In fact, researchers said that an entire island was swallowed by a mega tsunami, saying that the waves would have reached heights of over 500 feet. If this was to happen in the modern day, it's estimated that hundreds of thousands of people could potentially lose their lives, and the total damage cost would easily be over $200 billion. Ricardo Ramelow, a geologist at the University of Bristol in England, said the following about these mega tsunamis: These finds provide another line of evidence that volcanic flake collapses really can happen suddenly and trigger giant tsunamis, and so we should not underestimate the hazard potential of these events, that is, the threat they pose to our society. Another study revealed that ancient mega tsunamis reached heights even greater than 500 feet, saying that one study showed them that a wave reached 557 feet. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration have said that coastal regions around the tsunami wouldn't stand a chance, and that waves would come rushing inland. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration said the following: "Out in the depths of the ocean, tsunami waves do not dramatically increase in size, but as the waves travel inland, they build up to higher and higher heights as the depth of the ocean decreases. The speed of the tsunami waves depends on ocean depth, rather than the distance from the source of the wave. Tsunami waves may travel as fast as jet planes over deep waters." End quote. So what do you make of these announcements? Be sure to leave your questions and answers in the comment section below, and help us to grow these communities while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.